All right, let's begin. Hi, everybody. How you doing? My name is Michael Barris. I am a transformational speaking coach, author, and a speaker. And the title of today's presentation is Engage, Inspire, Influence. And this is the first part of a masterclass for speakers. Now, here's the question that may bog your mind a little bit. We love our phone. I would argue that my phone, this is like one of the best relationships I've ever had in my life. It does everything for me. It's always with me. I can always depend on it. Wow, what a great friend, huh? But in terms of public speaking or making any kind of communication where you want to make an impact, something has happened here. And it isn't really just the phone's fault. The phone is kind of only the latest example of a transformation that has been taking place over eons. You see, here's what's happened. A long time ago in ancient Greece, there was something called rhetoric. This was a study and a school of thought regarding how to influence people. Putting the audience first was very much about what this was about. And of course, in those days, there weren't so many options for getting a message across the way there are today. They'd have messengers who'd run things. They could use smoke signals. They could use different types of lighting things with fires. But what happened is that as time went on with all these different inventions, the sense of making a direct connection with the audience, almost in a kind of person-to-person way, became far more and more distant. So there was the telegraph, then there was the telephone, then there was radio, then there was TV, and now we have the internet. And you know as well as I do that we friend people who are thousands of miles away from us. Now, I'm not knocking the whole idea of making connections like that, but what has happened is that audiences today don't necessarily get that if they're speaking, the speech or the talk or whatever it is you're delivering should be about the audience. What do they think it should be about? They think it should be about the speaker or the content. That's one thing about the phone. You know, I can get anything I want, anytime I want through this device when I want it. That gives me a sense of, wow, I'm all powerful. My content is everything. I'm everything. But really, the only thing that matters in speaking is that you understand is that it's about the audience. It's not about the speaker or the content. It's funny, you have to understand that some of the world's highest paid speakers get this. If you ever watch one of these keynote talks, you'll see that they're very much engaged with moving the audience, entertaining the audience, provoking the audience. And I'm not saying you have to be a comedian. Some keynote speakers are magicians, for goodness sake. But what you do have to understand is that your first order of business is to make sure you are meeting their needs. And if a talk doesn't go right for you, chances are that was the problem. You didn't do enough to try to ascertain what the audience needed to feel satisfied. So today, I'm going to give you 3 takeaways that you can put into effect immediately. And they all stem from understanding that the audience is everything. It's how to troubleshoot your speech. When I say speech, I mean any kind of spoken communication, whether it's a meeting report, whether it's a stand-up talk, a presentation, in a media interview, how to get buy-in. In other words, how to make people want to buy your service or listen to your offer or get excited by your idea, and then how to manage speaking anxiety. That is generally the number one concern of most people. If you say to them, what speaking challenge would you most like to eliminate in the year ahead? This is the one they usually say, manage speaking anxiety. So that's why that's in here today. Now, before I get going, I want to remind you that since this is part 1 today of this masterclass, part 2 will be held again the 3rd Tuesday of the month, and I intend to keep doing it on the third Tuesday of every month. So that will make it Tuesday, February 20th, and our time will always be 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, the link for that next masterclass will come. You'll get it pretty soon, right after we finish today's masterclass. So watch your email for that. And if you want to book a consultation with me to get more insight into how to alleviate your own personal speaking challenges, you can reach me at this link, bit.ly/barris.consult. Okay, now getting to troubleshooting. If you do a speech and I said, if it flops, it just means you haven't done enough to try to figure out what the audience needed to hear and to feel in order to feel satisfied, in order to feel that you resolve their problem. And by the way, if you're ever trying to sell a talk or trying to really address people to really give it impact, try to identify a problem that they're struggling with and offer the solution that will immediately make your statue shoot up exponentially in their eyes. So here's a little example of how to tailor your content to the audience's needs. One thing you can do is if you're going to give any kind of talk, try to ascertain in advance, what do people want to learn from you? If it's a formal speech, talk to the host. If you're going to give a report at the business meeting and the leader hasn't made it clear to you what he expects you to do, find out, hey, are you just asking for a summary of what I've done, some examples, whatever? Do your homework. Do the best to understand what the audience wants. And then always be mindful of who you're speaking for. Again, if it's in an office, you pretty much are familiar with what their background and their interests are, although you may not necessarily know what everybody is working on. So these are things to consider as well. And once again, the tone and the style and the format you use should use the type of talk that you're giving or the type of event. Obviously, if I'm speaking in a conference, I'm on a stage. But if I'm on an online event like this, I'm using this, but we also could be asking for shows of hands, taking votes, using video. You have many options, but the point is that it's what will make the audience sit up and take notice, keep listening, and take home an important takeaway from you. And another good thing, as we just did here today before we got on today, we had a couple of attendees who showed up today to hear what we had to say. And we made a little chat just to get to know who they are, preferably to find out what is it that they're looking for, but also how much do they already know about the topic. Because even on the spot, you may want to tailor your outreach to make sure that you're hitting the audience where they need to be hit so that what you're giving them is relevant to their interests, to their work, to their lives, whatever the purpose of the talk is. Another thing you can do is after you speak, depending on how formal it is, you can give feedback forms. This is something that I did when I was coaching a young woman who worked for a New Jersey fragrance company. She was giving a major talk to the major conference for her industry, and the company asked me to coach her. I helped her write it, prepare the slides, and then got her ready to deliver it. But before we went to the big conference in Florida, I went to their office in New Jersey, and we got some of her colleagues around to listen to the talk. And then they filled out feedback forms afterwards to let us know what was missing, what we needed to hear more of, how was their delivery, all those sorts of things. They're very valuable. It's very important as you are creating your content that you are empathizing with the crowd. In other words, it means you've got to put yourself into the shoes of the audience, or else it's not going to go anywhere. The more you can make them feel, hey, he or she is one of us, the farther ahead you'll go in getting their respect. And that's going to pave the way for bonding. And once you get bonding, once you get this, you're going to warm them up to be more receptive to whatever your offer is or whatever call to action you're trying to get them to follow. It's also important to monitor social media chat if it's relevant. If people are talking, hey, this guy's going to be giving us a talk. Wow, I really hope he talks about X. Be mindful of that kind of thing. It can be very useful. And if there's an impromptu section, which there often is, for example, at the end of this talk today, we're going to be having a Q&A, you may want to be aware of what people could be asking, especially if you feel handling impromptu speaking is not your strong suit. So think about the biggest questions that come up. For example, people often are asking, hey, what do I do if my talk's not resonating? So if I'm in an impromptu setting, usually that will come up, in which case I already know the answer is try to pick up the pace a bit or get more interactive, ask questions, turn it into a Q&A if you want to. Another thing here important is that after you've given a talk, try to debrief. If the host brought you on as a guest in a webinar, meet with them afterwards and say, okay, what did you like about what I did? What didn't you like? How could I have improved it? What would you like to see more of? Because this will help you professionally grow, and ahead of further gigs like that, but it also will deepen your relationship with the host of that event, and it may help them to bring you back. You also have to acquaint yourself at some point, as I was mentioning, with those ancient Greeks. Simply, I'm not asking you to take a whole course in rhetoric, but there are certain ideas about using logic to understand if a speech or any kind of argument is going to resonate persuasively with the crowd. Because you understand that people you're speaking to, they have biases, and you have to be mindful of those biases, things you might not want to say, things you might want to say. It's a little more strategic. So make an effort afterwards to check this out, because this, in a way, is the beginning of all public speaking. Now, the other thing you have to do to make your speech go well is more and more you have to adopt a performer's mindset. Now, don't panic. If you don't play a ukulele, do card tricks, or tell jokes standing up to audiences, that's okay. All I'm simply saying here is you must understand that you have to move the crowd emotionally to keep them engaged with you. And that's what performers are doing. When you go to a show and you think, wow, that was a really good show, what did they do? They just tweaked your emotions. It brought you up, brought you down, made you worry, made you feel fear, made you feel happiness. They moved your emotions. And that's kind of what good speaking is all about. Even if it's a dry topic you're talking about, if you try to find anything where you can get yourself emotionally invested in it and make the audience feel a little more emotionally invested, you'll be farther ahead. So that's why we say principle number one here is prioritize delivery using the performer's mindset. In other words, you may love your content. You may be proud of the fact you're an expert on something, but that's not going to help you. If you start speaking and the audience tunes you out, fall asleep, all your hard work creating that content and researching it, rehearsing it, getting ready to deliver it is going to go unheard. You want to make your time worthwhile. So understand that it's really impossible to craft any kind of content for a talk, if you're doing it properly, without thinking of the audience at the same time. You cannot have content without thinking of the audience first. The second item there is put on a show. Now, again, I'm not asking you to dress up in a clown suit and ride a tricycle around a conference room, but that certainly would get attention, wouldn't it? But maybe not the right kind. But what I want you to do is be mindful that every time you're on a stage, you're a performer. And the audience, no matter where this is happening, is an audience. They're a group of people who are waiting to hear the show, if you will. Just a different kind of show than a clown riding a tricycle around a boardroom. And also, they expect that when they see a speaker as an audience and you're on a stage, and every speaking area you occupy is your stage, no matter where it is, they expect the show. It's just the way people are wired. Test it out the next time you're sitting in church or a synagogue or some kind of place where somebody is going to deliver information. You assume the role of an audience, and now you're looking to them as the speaker, which is a kind of a leadership role, to deliver the information that's either going to inform you, entertain you, excite you, make you wary of something, whatever. That relationship is always there. The next important thing is that you have to display personality. It's often said in business that audiences will decide whether to do business with you if they like your personality. Now, I'm not trying to make this like a high school popularity contest. That's not what this is about. What it's about is being as authentic as you can be, because when you show the audience you approach things confidently and you're not really mindful. If you make a stumble, for example, if you trip over your feet, you just gracefully recover and just keep going. You make it part of incorporated into the presentation, part of your style. And they'll be really impressed by that. They'll think, boy, this guy's really got confidence. So that's what we mean when we say display personality. Then on the subject of speaking anxiety, my one simple recommendation is that don't fight it. You got to let it in. Just feel the fear, let yourself feel the fear, but keep practicing and speaking. And what you're going to do, I'm going to talk about this more a little later here in a few minutes. What you have is you have your keywords. Those keywords are your anchor. And when you get in trouble, you lean back on those keywords and you find where you are, and that helps you to find your place again and you go forward. But the point here is you got to just let the fear in and you keep working the right way. There's no such thing as fearless speaking, and I'll get to that later. You also have to give the audience a reason to care what you're talking about. How often have you been to a speech and someone's going on and on and on and on and on and on, and you're saying, okay, I get it, but why am I supposed to care about this? And it seems obvious, but so many people violate that because they think, hey, I'm the speaker, I'm the content expert here. I got to kill them with content. But you're not even stopping to consider, well, is this something that's going to really reach them? Is this something they really need to know? Is this something that's really, does this keep the flow of the narrative going? All these questions are valid. But the bottom line is you don't want anything to come between you, whatever it is you're saying, and their caring about what you're talking about. The next thing is reveal what's inside you. Now, you may have been at a talk somewhere where the speaker started getting very emotional. Maybe it was a kind of a bit of a sad thing they were talking about or a troublesome thing they were talking about. And they start to cry and they go, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't expect to get this emotional. And then they're talking. And as they're talking, this happens with the audience. The audience bonds with them because there's nothing more arresting to an audience than watching a human being show their human fallibility. And that's, in a way, there's a tip there for you. If you ever want to give a talk that's going to resonate with the crowd, make sure that you're speaking to something that's going to bring out emotions to you that you can't help letting out. You can't help revealing them. That's why I'm saying reveal what's inside you, almost as if you didn't expect this to happen. Then the seventh principle here is keep things easy to follow. And this is the only time really in this list of 7 things that I'm getting very content oriented here. But this point here is that if you don't have content that's easy to follow, it's no good to the audience. It's like driving on a highway. I've experienced this sometimes on the New Jersey Turnpike or on certain highways where I'm looking for an exit and the signage is kind of confusing. And before I know it, I've gone by the exit and I think, oh, now I got to drive by it, turn around, find it, go back. You probably know what I'm talking about. That's why you have to create signposts with your talk that are cueing the listener that, okay, turn coming up here in logic, or okay, change in mood coming up here. Okay, here's the wind up for the conclusion. These things really matter to the crowd because it lets them know where they are at all time. Because let's face it, if you're giving a live talk, I know we have the ability to play things back here, but for all intents and purposes, that's not going to happen instantaneously. If I say something and it goes by you, it's gone because an audience for a live talk does not have the luxury of being able to play it back the way, say, someone who'd be listening to music on a music player could do, or somebody even who was watching a movie at home, they can always play it back, or TV shows. So that's why you have to keep things easy to follow because you don't want to get them lost. Your job, your duty as a speaker in anything is to keep the audience aware of where it is at every moment of the presentation. So now we come to the second takeaway, which I said was getting buy-in. Here's the tip of the day. I know we talk about our features. Wow, this product is really good. It's got all the toys. This is like how they would sell cars. It's got AM, FM radio, white wall tires, power windows. I'm going back a ways, folks. I get it. But this is how they would do it. Power antenna. Those really were toys. But that's called leaning on the features of a product. You don't want to lean on the features because after a while, that's boring. That's getting them to think. You know the expression, people buy an emotion and they justify it with logic. The more you can keep them emotionally stimulated, the easier it's going to be for them to follow your call to action. So you've got to be mindful of what to do. And here's a 4-phase system to get buy-in. This is called the 4 phases of getting buy-in. Something I created. And here's how it goes. There are 4 parts: the hook, the attention phase, the information phase, and the buy-in phase. In the hook phase, your main job here, as I said, is to arouse curiosity by whetting their attention emotionally. You know how on LinkedIn, we always talk about you have to start off a post with a grabby, short beginning. That's simply because it's going to strike at people's hearts. It's going to get them to look at it. It's going to look attractive. It's going to pull them in. It's the same thing with a talk. You have to generate curiosity about what's next. That means you have to zero in on their problem, right? There's something that they are struggling with. And the more you know about what that problem is and what has frustrated them in the past, the more you'll be able to bring a solution to them with all these phases we're talking about. And that's how they are going to get by. They are going to buy in. Now, notice I have there 7 seconds. In a live online presentation, I could lose you in 7 seconds. Hopefully it hasn't happened because we're way beyond that now. It's even said maybe 3 seconds because, on something like LinkedIn, people are scrolling through their feeds at lightning speed, right? So you can't mess around. You got to go for the jugular and grab them right away. The next phase is called the attention phase. And here's where you start rolling out the big ideas that you're hoping to hit them with. But it's very important to give them a reason to care about this. You have to show them how these ideas have relevance to their lives and work, and preferably in the moment. Remember, as I said, in this day and age, because of the phone, people are used to getting what they want when they want it. And so you have to try to keep your ideas timely, what they can use right now as much as possible. The next phase is the information phase. And here's where you keep rolling out those big ideas. But now you have to start showing the audience how you feel. Remember, I said about revealing those feelings. The more you can reveal how excited you are to be helping them, or by the brilliance that's in this solution, or that by the success rate that your clients in the past have had with this, the more you show how much this gets you excited, the more it's going to get them excited. And you've heard the expression that if you're not excited about what you're selling or what you're pitching, why should I get excited? And finally, hopefully all that has created a bond, and that's paved the way for this phase, the buy-in phase. And it's your role here to be as irresistibly inspiring as you can be as you're guiding them to essentially to the end of a journey here, right? All these steps. You got the hook them, you got the attention phase, the information phase, and all that was to bring them to this part of the journey. And you have to be so convincing that it's impossible for them to resist your call to action, whatever it is. And the way to do that is by doubling down on the emotion. I like things to come full circle. You want to bring back things you talked about and tie it all up in a nice, neat way at the end, and give them one little cherry on the cake at the end, one little topic, one little tiny thing to send them off on their way. And that's generally, if you follow those phases, that's a great framework for getting buy-in. Remember to put any questions you have in the chat as we go along, and we'll deal with them at the end. Now, the final thing I want to deal with here is managing speaking anxiety. Now, a lot of people will tell you, fearless speaking possible. Let me just have a drink from there. And that's not true. There's no such thing as fearless speaking. And I actually have friends who have built their brand around this, but the fact is, human beings are wired to feel fear to avoid danger. It's a survival mechanism. If you're in a movie theater and you're watching a scary movie and suddenly somebody jumps out of the bushes, everybody in the audience is going to go, ah, because those sensors are telling them, whoa, this is a threat, or at least a semblance of a threat. If you were in a jungle and a tiger did that, then it would be a real threat, but you get my point. The thing here is that you can't avoid fear, but you can learn to manage it. You can even use it to work with you, to help you, to be an ally. So that's why I say here, you can learn to speak effectively even as you feel the fear. And now I'm going to tell you how to do that. The first thing is, don't fight it. Just let the fear in. I like to think of it as speaking to this force that's become kind of like a familiar figure in your life over the years of speaking. So I would be saying to this fear, well, hello, fear. Look, you and I are kind of old friends by now, a little sarcastic, but sit down. You might as well sit down and make yourself at home. You do what you do, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do all the things that Mike Barris told me to do in this webinar, because the idea was to stay focused on my goals and on my mission, and to have my keywords in place to let me thrive even as you do what you do. Because let's face it, you kind of need fear to get you cranked up a bit. Good performers know that if they are too relaxed when they're giving a talk, they can wind up actually even boring the audience, which is the cardinal sin. In fact, when I do a speech and I'm preparing it, I start waiting for the little feeling of dread to hit me, because I know if I don't get that feeling of dread, I'm not going to be cranked up enough and give my best performance when I go on stage. So here's how you get it all together. As I said, you want to create keywords that will resonate with you emotionally. I'm not just talking about talking points, third cue, production up 35%, that kind of thing. No, you may need that. But what I want is for you to find something in there that stirs you, so that when you're talking about Q3 production being up 35%, you can say that allowed us to recover from a setback we'd experienced over the previous 2 quarters, but by management making some bold decisions that were not immediately popular, we were able to ride out the storm. And today we are looking at this 35% jump in Q3 profit, whatever. So you need to understand that when you're preparing a talk, a speech, whatever it is, you should be changing the keywords throughout this preparation phase. If they don't feel right to you, throw them away. If you think of new ones, put them in. If you feel there's whole sections that don't resonate, get rid of them. This is really where the speech gets written. Then when you practice, make as much use as you can of the video and audio recording tools you have on your phone and on your computer. You have to learn to look at yourself critically. As I say farther down, I'll get to that in a moment. You don't want to rely on family and friends because they're not going to be 100% honest with you. Excuse me. You have to learn how to say, how's my eye contact? Am I looking right at the camera? Because people often have a tendency to look off at the image right over here, as I'm doing here, right? You want to be right in that camera. Do I present enough energy? Are people going to fall asleep on me? Remember, on an online environment, it's easy for people to sign off and to lose track and to get distracted, because they can have all kinds of things going on behind you that you're not seeing. Barking dogs, kids running around, garbage trucks outside, lawnmowers going, trees being cut down, whatever it is. That's the price of doing business from remotely from the suburbs. But so learn to be critical of what you're seeing when you're practicing. Be honest, but be firm with yourself. What could I do better? Then there's the feedback. You need to get a knowledgeable, impartial third party. I think there's a direct relationship between how, as the quality of feedback you get increases, so does the quality of your performance. If you're just going to rely, and that's the next part of where it says disregard, if you're just going to regard on the opinions of your family and friends, it's not the best strategy to get you to a high level. First of all, they may not know more than you do. They're going strictly on their reactions as an audience, granted, and I respect all audiences, but to help you grow, they are not necessarily the most knowledgeable audience for you. And there should be an element of impartiality in there. If say you're hiring a coach, when people hire me, they bring me in to level with them, to give them honest feedback that will help them to get better quickly. And, at least the way I've been told that I do it is that I manage to be both compassionate and direct at the same time, which makes people like the way I work, which I'm very grateful for. But if you get family and friends, they'll go, yeah, it was fine, honey. Yeah, it was pretty good. You may say, well, then you may have to drag it out of them. Well, how was my beginning? Um, I thought it was okay. I kind of wondered for a while what the point was going to be. Okay, great. What did you think of the conclusion? How did I wind up? Oh, yeah. When you finished, it was fine. It seemed kind of long. See what I mean? If that's how you're going to work with family and friends, that's the only way you're going to get value out of them, and that can be a painful, time-consuming practice, rather than having a party like a coach saying, "You stop, you lost me in the first, really after the first 30 seconds, I thought you were going one way and then you shifted into something else. You need to go back and figure what is really the objective of what you're trying to get across here." That sort of thing. Finally, if you have a tendency to get nervous, and I'm going to get into nerves more in a moment, it's good to invoke a phrase that calms you. For example, a lot of the problem we have is that we're comparing ourselves to others. this often happens when people are in contests, for example. They're thinking, "Oh, look at him! Gosh, he was good. God, could I be as him? Gosh, wow, wow, wow!" And even at work, if you're hearing a colleague speak, you're perhaps sort of on the sly, kind of judging them, thinking, "God, that head's a pretty good speaker. Boy, I'm not that good. Maybe this is why they ask him to speak on behalf of the company so much." But you're not helping yourself with that kind of mindset. You really want to be able to say to yourself, I seek to excel, not to compete. Seeking to excel means being the best you can be uh, for who you are and as the result of all the work you've done. Just don't get into a comparing thing with other people, because that's going down a rabbit hole. It's not going to help you. As I mentioned, performers understand that they need to feel a certain amount of speaking anxiety because it helps them to be at their best. When you feel that, we call it the fight or flight response, it causes your brain to work faster. So you're staying a step ahead of the audience, maybe 2 steps, which you need to do sometimes, especially if things happen in speaking environments. There can be power failures. I don't know if you lose your signal or something like that, but in a live performance, wait, let me just get a drink of water here so I'm not clearing my throat in your face. There could be a power failure in a live talk where the lights go out. That happened to me once, and it was a talk about blues music, which is one of my passions. And I said, I guess this must be the dark side of the blues, that kind of thing. Um, and, and things like that will happen. You may have a heckler, somebody who thinks they're smart and is sort of calling out things from the audience while you're talking. And for a while, as long as it's not destructive, you can ignore it. But after a while, you might have, if they start getting obviously to be kind of a jerk, you may have to say, listen, I want to hear all your opinions after this talk is over. So please meet with me after and we'll have a chat privately. But for now, you're kind of wasting the time of people who have made an effort to be here today. They may even have paid to be there, right? So you kind of put it back on them, use a little peer pressure on them, and usually they back off. At the very worst, if you were in a place where there was a security guard, you'd have to call for have a person taken away. But that's a whole nother matter. The point is, don't lose your cool. Just hold your stage and always remember it's your stage. And the other things that happen, as I said, there could be a storm that keeps half your audience from arriving. Maybe they're all going to come late. That's going to change the dynamic in the room. How are you going to react to that? Sometimes you can get a bunch of people, again, in a live situation. You can have people who are talking and they're creating a distraction. There's only so much you can do with that because you can't insult them. In a way, the customer is always right, or the audience is always right, but you have to kind of let them know that they're being a nuisance. Again, sometimes if you wait long enough, peer pressure will cause them to stop, but often sometimes you may just have to forge on. It's like being in a movie theater where people are talking. You can't shush everybody. And often if you do shush people, they'll get into a fight with you, and that sort of ruins the experience of the movie. But the point I'm making is that you have to be able to think on your feet. And that's one thing that speaking anxiety helps you to do. It keeps you keyed up enough. Because as we said, being too relaxed can make you too boring. So to sum this up, you got to make everything work for you by doing 3 things. You have a personal mission. Why are you speaking in the first place? Is it just for your job? If so, can you make this be a little closer to your authentic interests? So you're not just a guy talking there with no investment at all in what's going on. Because you know that if you have no investment in what you're speaking about, the audience won't care either. It won't resonate with them, and they'll be falling asleep on you before you know it. The more you can follow your inner instincts about what you like doing and what's good for you, the stronger a speaker you'll be. And that brings me to the next point, is that if you can, choose topics that suit you. I used to love taking on topics that were a challenge for me, but I had to realize that I couldn't talk about everything that was challenging for me, because it would be like me trying to be a professional hockey player now. I'm not ready for that. I will never be. It's over my head. So what will I do instead? Why, I hike. I can handle that. It's that kind of thing. You have to go with where your strengths and skills and interests are at the moment. And the closer you get to fitting that, the farther ahead you'll be. That's why we say at the end, tap the power of why. In other words, why do you do this? Why are you here? Why am I speaking to you? And I know can tell you why I'm speaking to you. My superpower is I love helping people get to their goals and be where they want to go. I love being there for people. I'm kind of like the loyal dog. I forget what the certain breeds like mastiffs, gigantic, huge beasts that are very family oriented. Because every time I speak, I get a new family, and that's how I feel about the people I work with. So that's my why. You owe it to yourself to figure out your why. One more reminder: the masterclass coming up next will be on Tuesday, February 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to be doing this every third Tuesday each month. The link to that one will be coming shortly. Watch your email. And if you'd like to have a consultation with me about anything you want, whether it's how to fix a speech you're working on, how to talk to your employer, how to talk to colleagues, we'll have a chat, 30 minutes. I'd like to get to know you. It would be interesting to see how I can help you. So friends, if you want more information, please email me. I'm at michael@michaelbarris.com. And you can reach me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Michael Barris. I have scads of free content about helping you to become a stronger speaker there. Peruse it to your heart's content. You will find it useful. And also feel free to check out my website, which is michaelbarris.com. That explains how I work when I'm coaching people and how I work transformation sometimes from the stage when I'm a speaker. I'd love to have the opportunity to expound more on my ideas to help you get the transformation you want, become a better speaker. So now we'll wrap this up. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I'd like to leave you with this one more thought that as you go through speaking, understand there are always going to be certain struggles ahead of you. But to me, the one mantra to keep in mind is this, and it's something I keep on my wall on a Post-it note. Even a journey of 1,000 miles must start with a single step. Use that to fire you up. Good luck and keep speaking.